addition was repetitive issues in step 2 there. I think last year we dealt with the issues with telephones and other electronic devices and things like that. So students seem to have good understanding of that, and part of that is the design of our advisory and going through the handbook with kids and highlighting it. One thing that I added was items not allowed at school. It's interesting at the middle level you get some strange things that arrive at the school. It can be a major distraction. So I just wanted to be straightforward with some of those disruptive things to the learning environment. Nuisance devices can be a lot of different things, noise makers, we have kids bringing these plastic things that they're sort of fighting or trying to hit each other with. So, you know, some minor things, but just being straightforward with that. And then we are not going to be sending middle school report cards in the mail. I think one of our things that we can do to save on costs is make sure that we're informing families how to do those inspired. So the quarterly grades of middle school kids will be just online, so make sure communicating that through these. Question?
All right, also very thrilling information shared for this one. I already went through OVA last time, so I'm not going to go through that handbook. But I linked in our attendance procedure. We, again, met with Osceola police department and just went through some fine tuning of things and what we're doing. Again, this year we're trying to be proactive by calling or emailing home if there are 3 absences within September, just to hopefully get them off of that track. But we have multiple steps before we get to that truancy referral. We don't want to get to that. We want to be able to do some things proactively before we get there. So I think it's important for parents to understand that we always send the 5-day letter. We always send the 10-day letter. We don't pick and choose who we send those to. So as soon as those batches go out, we always get a lot of questions about why we're doing that, and we always leave it permanently. 2 big changes with attendance. One, when we receive doctor's notes or whoever the provider was that they saw, we just clarify what we need from them. So just identifying who the provider was and the date that the student is excused from, just clearing up what pieces are on there, and receiving those right away. Sometimes we have people that save those for the end of the year once we get into truancy problems. We need to have those right away. So we just put that in writing. And then tardies, we really had a big problem with tardies at 2/3 of the year. Then we started doing some lunch detentions, and so we just put into the handbook that the students need to be called in by 11:30 by their parents to have that tardy excused, and if not, then they'll do lunch detention. So that's kind of the process that we're going to start consistently next year.
And tardy just mean late in the morning, you don't mean missing part of the day?
It could be part of the day as well.
Oh, okay, so it could be they're leaving.
We just had a lot of parents just not calling in, and we didn't know where that student was, so it's just a lot of like, we're not sure what's happening.
Do they call or can they use that messenger?
They can use
Message center, email, call. Yep,
Just
lots of ways.
Just communicate.
Just communicate, yep, so we know what's going on.
Send a bird.
Yep, send a bird, sure, that would be fun. Well, there's a lot of geese out there, so actually don't send it. And then just some of the academic pieces, as you look at our high school schedule, there's a lot of different choices for kids, and just clarifying what some of those are and what changes we made. Non-attending, kids have to be on track for graduation before we would allow them to have a non-attending, and then they can only do 1 per trimester. So a non-attending is no credit but no expectation. So different than the next one, which is youth apprenticeship. They might not attend school for part of the day, an hour or 2 during the day, but there are expectations for coursework at school as well as work requirements.
Is non-attending only for seniors?
Correct. Yep. Yes, youth apprenticeship is different, and they have to work 10 hours per week per period they would like to have youth apprenticeship. Again, they still have to be on track for graduation, making sure they have all of their core credits lined up, since youth apprenticeship counts as elective credit. We found that kids are frustrated with us at the end of the year because they wanted to just put youth apprenticeship on their schedule without having a job. We had made them fill their schedules until they can prove that they have a job. That helps us on the back end when they get to school and they don't actually have a job and then they don't have classes lined up. So trying to be proactive with that. Study halls, really limited study halls, saving those for kids who that's truly a need for, instead of just kind of hanging out in the library and taking a break. We're trying to make that focused work time, and we intentionally did that because our win is 40 minutes now. For a long time it was 20 minutes, then we changed it to 40, trying to make that intentional time for them to use.
And all those things that Ms. Meyer's talking about are pathways that some kids are on. So for instance, and maybe, you get through school and your school work types student individual. Well, that's where like having not attending and possibly going to a job, or using youth apprenticeship going to a job is an important thing. But if you're a student that's still looking at going to, university or things beyond, then those things are, I would say frowned upon, if you will, or they're not recommended by us. We want to see students in class by class period of the day or in some type of school.
Transfer or replacement credits came up as a question, and so we just looked into that a little bit more and then added some clarifying language. We had this in our handbook before, but it was just very, very broad, so just trying to clean up what that looks like for parents. And in summary, basically, it's like if someone wanted to go take a summer school course through a different district, they have to apply through open enrollment to that district has to accept them, that district then has to notify us that we're losing our students for the summer, basically. They're gonna earn a credit through that school, and then they're coming back to us for the school year. So how that would work for us is we would accept that credit. We would use it as an elective credit, so if someone took an extra math class somewhere else, we would accept that as an elective credit, not a math credit, but we would continue moving them forward in their math sequencing. Any questions about that? Okay. Some changes maybe for the senior year, they need to fill their schedules. We have a lot of seniors who just don't wanna put anything down, so our expectation is that they're filling their schedules with classes until something else happens for them. And then early graduation, again, this was in our stuff before, just clarifying language on what that would look like, creating a timeline of what that would look like for students. We would have a parent meeting with them. And then when they choose to graduate early, they still attend our graduation ceremony and are part of that whole piece at the end of the school year. But they're off campus as soon as they're technically graduated earlier in the school year, and they wouldn't be able to participate in any extracurriculars or athletics or anything like that. When they're done, but they can still participate in the graduation ceremony. Okay, and then the big one, the hard one, will be cell phones. So doing what's best for kids, and sometimes that's the hard thing. We will be implementing a no cell phones in all academic areas moving forward. So kids can still have their cell phone on them per se. It can easily be turned in at the beginning of the hour. We have teachers chose if they want a bin or over the door hanging organizer, and we'll collect them that way. Just to really limit how kids are using them and making sure that academics are the priority when they're in that learning environment, because we all know that it's hard to get off of our phone when it's the distraction there. Even if it's just sitting there buzzing, it's still what we want to do and check, so our attention is not always focused. Added in there about smartwatches, those can still be worn, but if we're still using them to communicate or do other things on our cell phone or on our watches, just like we would on our cell phone, then we would ask for those to be turned in as well. And we just created a protocol for if that becomes a problem or we're not following that expectation, turning those into the office for certain amounts of time depending on the level.
Yep. And I would say that what we're doing here, I would say for most kids, I would say 70% of our classes already kind of implemented this. It was more maybe the teacher-led type program, but I would say now, we were in communication with, you want to list the 8 local districts around us. We're all very similar to what everybody's going to this next year. Some probably started last year, I think this year fall started a couple of years ago. But between us, Amory, Somerset, and Richmond, and so forth, we're all following very similar type of expectation for the cell phone use.
Who is the lucky one to break that news to the students?
Well, that would be probably me. Maybe our student school board rep.
Yeah.
With the tie the first day. Yes.
Do you know how the students feel about that? Is there a feeling from some or others?
I guess, offhand, like I said, I think for some classes, some kids go through already, it's not gonna be that big of a change, to be honest with you. I can't tell you that I have had some communication with some students, and of course, right away, it's like, this is going to suck, right? Like anything else, and I think once they get going, I think they're gonna find out, I think for some groups of kids, it's gonna depend on some of the courses. I think when you're in some of the AP courses and you're in and amongst other things, you're really using your cell phone. They might give you a break, say it's 35 minutes, they might give you a 5-minute, here we go, you got a cell phone, use your 5 minutes, then we got another 35 minutes, so let's go. And you have some of those breaks within a class period as well. Being 6 to 8 minutes, we have some staff that do like a little, walk and talk. Well, you have the opportunity to be able to move around. They have a time between the class periods at lunch, all those things, but really seeing it, it's like even for us as adults, right? Myself, I know that it's hard for some kids to understand how to handle that. And so these would be some expectations in place on how to better manage it in the school environment.
As a teacher that went in the district that did this a handful of years ago, I was way more relieved that this was a policy than it was. And there was like 2 parents that came in and called our principal and said obscene things, and it's, to me, it's absolutely ridiculous that even took place. And there was some comments like, how can you, what if my kid needs to call me? Well, they asked the teacher, can I go to the office to make a phone call, or can I get my cell phone and step out in the hallway and make a phone call? Yep. That's how simple it is. But yeah, it's, reasonable conversations can be had. But then now it's no distractions in the classroom. Learning takes place. That's how simple things. And it was just that simple. It's and then again, it's you've got students that just feel way because they just feel safer, because there are some kids that feel like their pictures are being taken because that's being done in classrooms. It's just simple things like that were being done that aren't being done anymore as well. So yeah.
So is it a policy or is it just in our handbooks?
You're talking at St. Croix or?
Yes. So is it a school policy or is it
Yeah, it's a
board
it's
policy
a
or
policy,
is it?
and it's in
Or
the
is it
same.
just in these are the handbook?
It's a handbook, and then we have there's an electronic device policy, and
Interesting.
I do agree that
doesn't sound like it.
Oh.
no, because I felt like a lot of classes this year, especially like some of the teachers that were just kind of laying back with phones. They're just kind of really disrespectful to like the teachers when they're teaching, because they just like sit on their cell phones the entire time. And then it made me feel really, really bad, because the teacher was putting in their time and effort to make the curriculum like Spanish with Mr. Hymas. That's all that was this year. So everybody was sitting on their phones, nobody was paying attention, and then people would complain to them, "Oh, why do I have such a bad test score?" And it's like, well, because you're on your phone the entire time. So whether the kids like it or not, I think it is for the best. I think we'll probably see an increase, at least in just scores on average for a lot of things. So I think it is for the best, whether or not most kids like it or not.
And they know that too, right, deep down.
Yeah.
It is. It's deep down, I think mostly everyone knows.
Well, that's what I was looking for out of Scott. Is it gonna be student pushback, or is it gonna be parent pushback? That's my gauge, how's this gonna go? Because the students I know, they wanna interact more. They're not even, they're on their phones more than they should be. Like, they wanna be more communicative.
We've had some subs that have subbed in other districts, right, and so their feedback is just how thankful they are that this is gonna be happening, because it's so much easier for them walking in knowing this is the expectation versus what does this classroom want versus this classroom. So I think we will have, it will be a challenging start to the year probably, or we're anticipating that. I mean, you think about how much more cell phone use is probably happening over the summer versus even during the school year, so that might be harder for kids, but I think it'll be a good change to make in the end. It's just, it'll be an adjustment.
Well, Scott, go ahead and take us on the neighbors.
All right.
Do some fun stuff.
Yeah. Just some updates from the summer, I guess. Our Oscar group of students, never developed, had a couple team building opportunities this past summer. They got together, started doing it. I believe Tristan was part of that as well, and they started to set some expectations for the fall, but also one day they went bowling as a group, and then on July 9th they went canoeing as a group, just to try to build that team type of atmosphere with them, and knowing what their expectations are, and we still have more things to do with them. But really what the Astor Group is kind of sets a tone for our especially our incoming freshmen and the interaction with them around the building. Just a couple updates, and I guess, you know, with not being in session, but, just recently, Elietta Eugene was just named Sports Illustrated Female Athlete of the Year. Wisconsin edition Female Athlete of the Year, which is pretty cool. Also, this past week, we had 4 individuals that wrestled, and I'm sure, you know, they're on Facebook, but it actually is a pretty big tournament in Fargo. It's the, national tournament, and, Elliot Havlish was earned All-American status wrestling Greco-Roman, which is a pretty impressive, accomplishment. To name some of the things our kids have been doing. And then also just, if you're ever, especially in the morning, you know, I say for business, OHS is, in the morning is pretty busy with kids in all the time with, athletics, band lessons, marching band. Wednesday is kind of a slow day, but that's when our, you know, they also have the cross country practice that morning, so a lot of things always happen, shaking and moving, with kids in the building. Actually, I was just walking out and 2 kids were in the gym, and you know, it's one of those things where I've always believed that this is what makes Osceola great is our doors are open for kids. And I'd rather see them in the gym doing something than someplace else downtown. So having the opportunity for the kids coming in, it's hugely appreciated to the coaches, but also from I thank you to the board here and our district office admin to really support that and the people for our staff to be here with the kids and having those opportunities available in the summertime.
You're here. Questions for Scott and Amanda? All right, Shannon, you're up.
Little by little, we're starting to get more information that we need for building our budget for next year. And the biggest piece of it is obviously our equalization aid generally, just terms are used interchangeably. That was released, the estimate was released on July 1st for us, so that's whenever that we're plugging. Unfortunately, we did see a reduction in our aid for this year. The aid has a inverse reaction with our revenue limit, which we'll see when we get into the 25-26 budget. So as our aid is reduced, the revenue limit goes in and supplements it. So this isn't that we are taking a hit on our budget necessarily, it's just that for whatever dollars we're being reduced in aid, the revenue limit is gonna come in and supplement that. Then the next piece is that the Department of Revenue will release equalized values and property tax values within the districts. That's about August 15th. Right now, we are using a plug figure of 6% increase on revenue in the worksheet. As that number fluctuates, the mill rate will fluctuate. So as that number goes up, the mill rate could go down. If that number goes down, the mill rate will slightly increase. Lastly, we have our audit scheduled for August 18th through 22nd.
Awesome. Questions for Shannon? Dr. McStubbs?
All right, on Wednesday, June 18th, the leadership team spent a few hours in this room, really taking a deep dive into non-discrimination, harassment, Title IX complaints, all the works, bullying, and we are all successfully trained to be investigators for Title IX, but Shannon and Scott hold the title of compliance officer, so that's a positive move. But it was really productive. We looked at policies, which is why you have a bunch of policies in front of you, and talked through them, talked about the investigation process, how do we make sure that it's complete, how do we make sure that it's fair, and that it's also legally sound. And the other piece coming from that, we actually, if you can click on that dedicated website, in order to make sure that our families have easy access to the forms that they need, we're gonna have 2 additions to our district webpage. There's a non-discrimination, anti-harassment, and then there'll also be a bullying page. And on this page, we'll have the links to the updated policies, and we'll also have a complaint form. Because we really want our families to know, like, we wanna hear from you, we wanna make it so that if you can't pick up the phone and call us, that there's a place to find the information on the website. And there's also different investigation protocols for bullying policy, for discrimination, for harassment, and then for Title IX. So all of that were pieces and parts that we learned in conjunction with our some people from our legal firm. So really, and we also have like now forms for the Title IX compliance to make sure that as we go through it, because there's timelines, it's 10 days for this and 15 days for that, and 45 days for this, to make sure that we all understood it and we do what we need to do with that. So it was a really unique session, but it feels like it was a long time ago, but it really wasn't that long time ago. And even when we met today as a leadership team, we were talking still about that process and how we make sure the handbooks and the policy and our procedures are all accurate. And then secondly, just wanted to run through the strategic plan really quickly. I sent you a separate in your email. Slides. But the strategic plan and the first few slides you guys both all seen before, because we've talked about how our plan was created. So April will just do it, we will just talk it through. But the big piece was, it was 2020 to 2020. So we've had 3 years of the plan. The beautiful part of working with Teamworks is that you don't redo your plan every year, you just enhance what you already have in play. So again, Teamworks, that's what we talked about. You remember there was the management consultation governance part, and we spent some significant time last year as a board talking about what governance is and who all the contributors are to our community. And then pathways to success. This is the process, and what made Teamworks a little bit different than other places that you can strategic plan with is they have a very strategic process that you go through, but the board is engaged at the very end. They were involved throughout the process, but more at the very end than at the beginning. These are the team members that were there. As a leadership team, we looked through here, we were like, okay, who's still here, right? Who's still in the community? So you think about people and change over just the village administrator, right? And Bob's still here, so Bob Meyer, bring him back, right? Okay, so that was and then the steps, and we'll go through these quickly. We did I think the important part is to look at that amount of time. So there was a story wall, just keep going, yeah. Then there was an environmental scan, which was 3 hours, and then we talked about desired daily outcomes. And then we went through the desired daily experience, and then the classroom theory of action was another 3-hour session, and then we developed district vision cards. And then, and then COVID hit. So then keep going, because we did this kind of during COVID, and so strategic roadmap is what we're gonna be talking about, and then we finalize the strategic roadmap. And then the board had a very specific part of the strategic plan, and they still do. And then the structures and governance and practice. And so this was the product, essentially the very short version summary of our mission, our vision, our core values, and core strategies. So this is the part, so we move the next slide. Keep going, yeah. So the core strategies, if you look at those, improving our academic achievement with accountability through data-driven practices, that's very teaching and learning focused, or student learning focused. If you look at B, instructional strategies, student learning focused. If you look at C, it's also student learning focused. And then D is operations, and E would be workforce development. What we have found difficult is those core strategies, when you try to build building goals under them, they're very, very specific. So if you want to change it, so can you hit it one more time? That's what we're talking about updating. Okay? You're welcome. So looking at taking those core strategies and actually having keys to excellence. So learning and growth, health and security, engagement and communication, and finance and operations. And then underneath those, you have your, there you go. So that's what it would look like. And then underneath learning and growth, what the district, what the district would be, or a certain school building could look at the learning and growth, the health and security, engagement, communication, and then you have a 3-year plan of those being at the top, and then what do you do in year 1, what do you do in year 2, and what do you do in year 3. And you can add words under there. But what I wanted to do was talk to y'all and say, is this an okay modification? Because if this is an okay modification, and if you wonder how long it takes 7 people to wordsmith 4 categories, it's a couple meetings worth of where we're at. So this is where we landed. And again, it was like, what's the right iteration of the word? Oh, we have an ing here. What does this look like? So the question for y'all is, are you comfortable with us making this modification and then using this moving forward to put, because it's, right, it's our, how do you get to excellence? And we talked about keys to excellence, we talked about pillars of success, we talked about pillars of excellence. So there's been a lot of words in there. So this is just bringing it to you for you to think through, not at all something that we're asking for approval on. Want you to have some time and energy to think about it, but want to talk it through with you. We'll bring it back in August for more conversation, so if you have thoughts now that you would like us to consider, that would be helpful. Thoughts now? Feedback now? And for those of you who like strategies, like example, under the learning, and growing, some strategies would be like curriculum alignment with state standards, implementation of research instructional practices. We're talking about having AI, or having our staff get some education on artificial intelligence and how it can help them be more efficient, but also they need to for in their classrooms. That's the learning and growing piece. The health and security that you can see where an SRO would fit under there, or our safety plans, finance and operation, long-term planning, engagement in communication, that would be internal and external. How do we communicate across the district and plan vertically, but also how do we externally communicate and create advisories so that people have voice.
What it was like.
Remote, yeah. So like A, B, and C would actually go under the learning and growth. And then the D would go under the operational, I can't even remember now. I was gonna say operational excellence, because I think that's where we started. Operations, and then aligning with our, supporting our staff, but, so that's all, yeah. Mhm.
Questions, thoughts, feedback, no? Thank you for your work on this.
It's been fun. I don't know if they would describe it as fun, but I would say we've had some good laughs as we've talked through what's the best word and also
Yeah.
what words make people feel uncomfortable and what words feel solid.
You're not taking away anything that was there, you're just making it more usable and everything.
That's what actually, that's where it came from when Darren came on board. He's like, so where do I tie my goals to? And it was like, well, these long sentences, as opposed to this is what we're gonna do, and this is how we're gonna get there. So you can thank Darren for all of it.
Thanks, Darren.
For all that fun you had.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Anything else for Becker? And that brings us to 2B, School Nutrition Department report. Good.
Yeah. Actually, Lisa's there, if you'll have this. Thank you for their time tonight to present this. I know it's a lot of numbers and, it's a lot of information, and if there's something that I don't have up there that you want me to provide information, I can certainly circle back with you and get that to you. But every year when I finalize the year and I put these numbers up there, it kind of takes me back a little bit to think, God, I can't believe we actually did that. I feel like in the middle of it, it's crazy, and it feels like that some days when I look and I'm like, wow, like, you think about the number of breakfasts and lunches that we serve up there, and that's just the kids. We're not talking visitors, guest staff, that's just strictly kids that are coming through the lines. And, I mean, almost 70,000 breakfasts and, I don't know, almost 160,000 lunches. That's, if you can kind of put that into perspective, if you think about, we're the largest restaurant in the area, and how fast we serve, that would be like approximately 15 cars to a drive-through in a minute, if you talked about number of customers and how fast we serve them and what we do. So it's a pretty amazing thing that our minimal staff do every day. And so kudos to them for getting this done and making kids happy while they do it. So just a couple things I did put quite a history on there as far as ADP is our average daily participation. So we have days that are ups and downs, but on any given day, that's the number of students that we're serving. Couple things kind of pre-COVID, during COVID, free meals for all, back to regular. There's a couple bumps in there when we added 4K as an all-day programming, we increased participation a little bit there because we had more customers. But for the most part, you know, declining enrollment means less customers available. So we see that same drop in enrollment as we do in our participation, which is hard when you are participation based and funded that way. So that's an ongoing challenge for us. Our fund balance,
that's where we ended, or started the school year, I guess, but I haven't, finished the annual report yet for this year, but, from that fund balance, there'll be our, freezer project that is complete and done and running and working well, at the high school. That was our big project last year. So that fund balance will definitely be declining, both from a program, deficit as well as, significant investment in that project. Along with other state aid issues, we have not yet received our reimbursement rates, which usually come out July 1. The projection is for the first time in a long time, we might actually even see a decrease, which is very disheartening. Changes in the federal funding as far as, Medicaid, acceptance, will also affect how we are directly certifying students for free and reduced meals. We're not sure what that looks like yet. But that'll definitely affect our reimbursement as well. So as soon as I get those numbers, we'll have to kind of re-budget and figure out what we're gonna do with our budget. I apologize, I missed the June meeting, but thank you for approving those meal price increases. I don't know if that's gonna be enough. I mean, we're looking at, increasing food costs, increased labor costs, and then with a potential decrease in funding from the federal level, I just really don't know what our program looks like this year. So we may have to look at what that pricing structure looks like after that. I know, talking to some surrounding districts, they're looking to raise prices anywhere from 20 cents to 30 cents per meal, just to try and recoup that lost revenue from the USDA. So stay tuned. I may be back again. As far as our lunch account management, we ended the year with approximately $9,400 in unpaid meal charges. That's still fluctuating a little bit. We're still seeing some accounts being paid off over the summer that we're working with people. We still had approximately, I think, $1,200 or so left from a donation last year that we're looking to disperse to that, so probably around $7,000, I would say, is we're gonna end up with a negative account balance hanging out there. No, last year we did. Last year we started with a clean slate, so that's a year's worth. You know what it is. I guess if you have questions about that, there's another policy coming up later, but, last year we started out with a really rough start. We had 4 open positions. One was an internal transfer, so that was a bit of a struggle, but, we were able to hire all positions, so that was great. And we actually added a student to help at middle school, just with the timing structure and the addition of the 5th grade there. That was really helpful as a march on, that we really got things done. We were able to get rid of the styrofoam trays, go back to business as usual. I do have one open position at the high school for just a point of sale person at the lunch meal. We'll be able to start without that if we need to. It just won't be quite as convenient and efficient through the line. Without having 2 point of sale stations, we'll just have 1, but I'm hoping to get that hired before we start. I'll be posting that soon. I haven't done it over the summer times. It's very hard to train someone when you're not able to do the job. So we'll look to start that person in August, hopefully. Again, our project list, we had the external cooler and freezer added at the high school. That was a new project for everybody, and great working with Hunter in his first project lead with us, and it's running beautifully. It's become our summer storage area. And as far as ongoing equipment purchases, yet to be determined what we have for funding. We have, just like every other project, and aging equipment and aging buildings, we have a large project list, but trying to figure out what that looks like with what type of funding we might have to do, and then prioritize from there based on what we're doing. So we're gonna keep on, we're gonna feed kids and do the best we can with what we got. And any questions that you have about certain numbers, areas, things I need to get back to you for information on, or?
I know we never have in the past, but if the, numbers come down from the federal government had a bigger hit on you than what you're anticipating, would there ever be consideration for raising costs mid-year? I mean, I know we typically do it in the summer, but, if that's something.
I guess it probably depends on, if we would get the numbers prior to the start of school, and if it is a significant hit, if we could potentially get that happening before the start of the school year, so it isn't a mid-year increase. that would be amazing, but again, I don't know, I mean, I know that you waited for funding until October for them to decide, you know, I don't know if they'll start with last year's funding level to get us started and then decide if they're gonna increase or decrease, or they've really been given no timeline of when those are gonna be coming available, so. I would like to do it mid-year, but it would be nice for parents to know the budget and understand why, but it is what it is.
We haven't been in this type of predicament before.
No, I mean, it's
Usually-
been a little bit later, but it's usually July 1 they have something.
Questions, comments, thoughts for Susan?
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you,
Thank you for
Susan.
your
Okay, oh, thank you.
Alright, that brings us to item 3, engage in continuous improvement of student support systems and programs. Item A is review the 24-25 budget.
As we prepare for 25-26, we're still closing out 24-25. Not a lot of difference between this and probably what we saw last month, besides the fact that we have now closed out all salaries and benefits for the year. So what you see for activity, and this is the revenue side, but we'll get to expenses. All right, when you see that, that'll be the biggest portion of it. From a revenue standpoint, we booked our property taxes, so we get that last portion of property taxes in August 18th. We pushed them back into revenue for this year because they were on this year's levy. That's been allocated. We still have some grants out there that we have final claims that we need to do, so from a revenue standpoint, we are still shoring that up. And then if you wanna go to the expense side, you'll see what I'm talking about in regards to all salaries and benefits have been allocated for the year. We came in pretty darn close there on the salaries and benefits, and if you go to salaries, if you go to the benefits, I think we're slightly under. And then of course, expenses, we do have invoices coming in here and there where we are still pushing them back into last fiscal year, but we probably, I would anticipate by the end of July, we'll have most other invoices from. And of course, we'll show that up as we get through the audit, and it'll be preliminarily finalized when we get to the annual meeting.
Questions on 24-25 budget? Alright, that brings us to preview of 25-26 budget.
So 3 parts to this agenda item. One being that revenue limit worksheet that I alluded to in the admin reports. That is a piece of that puzzle for 25-26. So as you can see, this is what we are anticipating right now. And when I was talking about that inverse relationship with the aid, if you're on the revenue limit side where you see the 7,825,929, that's the July 1st aid estimate. Prior years past, that's been around 9 million. As that number drops, the allowable revenue limit, number 13, that number will go up for us. So essentially saying that we're getting less money from the state and more money from the taxpayers, because from a per pupil standpoint, as we reduce our enrollment, but our property values continue to increase, the state is saying that you don't need as much from the state to cover that, it's gonna be coming from the property taxes. That's probably the most simplified way I can say it. Other than saying also like from the state standpoint, it's a pie, right? And our portion gets smaller as our property taxes, essentially property values go up. So the way that we have it set right now, we are obviously looking to utilize all that we can in that revenue limit authority for 25-26. This is the estimate that we're going with. You will see one of the changes that we have from 24-25 to 25-26 is that we are only including one debt payment this year. That's to manage that mill rate. So right now we're anticipating about $5.72 mill rate for 25-26. If we get back our property values and they are higher, I know last year we had placeholder for 4%, it came in at 9.18. 9.18%, so this year we are at 6%, could be higher, could be a little bit lower. The second piece that we have is, this is just a general overview now that we have those pieces from the state that we know about. There are some lingering things, lunch prices, whatnot, but the big portions for us, this is a breakdown for 25-26 and 26-27, what it looks like if there's been an increase to our revenue limit or an increase to our budget, or if there's going to be a decrease. revenue limit authority, we have that 325 that's going in there. General equalization aid, there's no increase for us. Special education and categorical aid, that was increased from 33% to 42, and then it'll go to 45 and 26, 27. It still remains at some sufficient, meaning that you don't get the, you're not guaranteed that 42%. We likely will land between 39 and 40. We do anticipate it being about $155,000 decrease in the transfer from Fund 10 to this, Fund 27. And then for 26, 27, that will be determined. High cost special education aid, this was increased significantly. It has no impact for Osceola because as of right now, we have no students that fall into that category. I believe 3% of the districts in the state of Wisconsin actually have students that fall into the high cost special education category. That one is a potential one. No, sorry. Student mental health, this is kind of a weird one. It's gonna increase for 25, 26, and then it's gonna take a huge decrease in 26, 27. So we'll see a little bit, about 22,000, 23 if you round up, increase for 25, 26, and then we're gonna flip that and go to a decrease of 50,000 in 26, 27.
Why? That's how it was allocated.
Yep.
So it's the same allocation over 2 years, but there's a 40 million going this year and 10 the next.
Yeah, the total allocation didn't change, but they changed the way that it was given, how it was given per year.
Cool.
Open enrollment is increasing. This is gonna be a net zero impact for us because we are hovering right around even for ins and outs. High cost transportation aid, it's not, right now, there's not qualifying for us, and then in 26, 27, it's gonna go from 400 to 450. That'll be determined, we'll see how we fall with that. We'll just keep watching that. Literacy funds, the impact was minimal, the distribution hasn't been determined yet. We did get for 24, 25, we got our
Yeah, and
allocation.
I was in a meeting today actually, and we talked a little bit about that 20, and like one of the pieces is a literacy coach, but they're paying a total of 68, and then you have to meet a certain threshold of test scores in order to be able to get a coach, because I was like, how great would that be to have a person even for 1 year to come in and be able to work with our staff on the best literacy practices. But essentially was told that more than likely it's gonna be going to the Madison, Milwaukee school districts. It's not gonna be coming over to the Osceola, and then the rest of the funds, they haven't figured out how they're going to disperse. So they've been released, but how they're gonna be allocated, we don't know yet.
Vouchers, this was a big discussion point for this budget. It's a taxpayer impact. That's important to note. This is not a budgetary impact. Whatever we pay or whatever we have our aid reduced by, we then turn around and put that on the tax levy. That is what we're allowed to do. We're looking at, last year I think we were at about 194,000. We've upped it to 215. The other nuance with this is that we don't get those numbers, the amount of students until October 15th, and private schools are not required to tell us what those numbers are. So I've reached out to the private schools that we, that were affected by, and I haven't received any information. So again, that won't come out until October 15th, but we have increased that on the revenue limit authority. Just a couple of things that we want to talk about. Again, we keep, I know we keep bringing this back, but just showing how far behind we are per pupil from an inflationary standpoint. This is just from 2013 through 2025. You can see at 2,300 per pupil, that would equate to an additional almost $3.4 million for us.
There it is, there's the stool, right? This was the 1993 agreement that the state made with public education in order to have the revenue. Two of those three are not.
I remember sitting in here. If I say that again, James, punch me in the face.
I mean, it's positive that the special ed.
Punch me in the face like a kid.
it's pretty devastating, actually.
And nothing else budged like it should. And then they try to put a spin on it, like, oh, this funding is great for public education. The kid won, another didn't.
And I think that's the piece is, lots of money went to public education, but not in the ways that it's. And I don't know how many times you heard Shannon just say, on the backs of our taxpayers, on the backs of our taxpayers, on the back, that, I think it's 3 different times. You know, so your property value increases, more money for the taxpayers.
And then what happens is public education becomes the enemy. Because what happens is more schools again, another 70% are gonna ask the public for more referendums. So public education is gonna be the enemies again in April and November's, and everything's we're gonna be asking for more money. So the people that hate public education are just salivating over this. Because they know we're gonna look greedy again and again because the government isn't giving us the money that we're supposed to be getting. So we just look like the greedy people because we're not getting what we're supposed to be getting. It's great. It's just what.
Well, and isn't the increase, I mean, I know that you increased money in public ed, but it was really just to keep the programs that are current for the funding at what it was, because everything else is going up too. So yes, they increased funding, but not. But my other question for you is, what is maybe gonna be the impact if all the title money starts to go away?
So we've been in contact, right now, the main question was for Title II and Title V. Obviously 24, 25 is been out.
Right.
So my main question for, CSEP, if we work with them closely, is should we maximize our carryover in case something were to happen and we're not gonna get it? She didn't seem too worried today, and in my conversations with her before, she wasn't too worried about it, but right now, those are the only 2 that we've heard that are on the table. Title II, which is our, professional development that we utilize that one, and Title IV, some technology-based stuff.
So it's still $50,000.
Yes.
And when you talk about professional development, that's where we get all of our money to grow our staff. That is the work that we look at and go, hey, so we wanna bring somebody in to talk about AI with staff, that costs money, that's where it's coming from. So Corey, I'm still holding out hope that goes, so James, please don't mention it.
They did release the, after-school funding, so that could be viewed as a positive. They released those CLC funds, I did see that. And I don't know, that's a more to come.
I know, and the food service thing was on the line too, I mean, so. And I wanna say, I think there was one of the other titles that were, in jeopardy, so I was just curious what the
Title
impact.
III, they talked a little bit about too, but we don't get very much for that, so I don't think much attention.
I was thinking there's one of them, but it's unbelievable what's happening at the national level.
So, that brings us to our preliminary 25-26 budget.
Hey,
Don't do it.
it's just hard communication, because people hear, oh, you're getting more money.
Yeah.
It's just hard.
The headlines say that.
Exactly.
Kids want.
It's hard to describe it.
As we get, again, more pieces of the puzzle, we're able to get a little bit closer to the numbers that we would be looking at for 25-26. Now with equalization aid and that revenue limit part, we are looking at approximately $882,000 deficit for 25-26, and then a little over $1 million for 26-27. And I know the conversation for us has been about that fund balance, right, where we're gonna stand. So you can see that if we stay with the 882, depending on how property values come in and depending on how enrollment comes in, because that's another piece of this, we'd be at 24.5%, and then just slightly under that 20% ending 26-27.
And that's factoring in the biennial budget, correct?
Yes,
Right,
that's for the next 2 years.
Yep.
Because we know what's going to happen in the next 2 years. Anything after that, I think we can all say is, that's a little hard to predict.
So if we set our property tax placeholder is 6%, it comes back higher, what does that do to this model, just on a large sum?
Doesn't,
Doesn't do anything to the model, cause that's not budgetary, that's strictly on the mill rate, so as that number would come in higher, you see that $5.72 go lower. As that number comes in lower, you see it go higher. It won't change these numbers other than that average tax impact on the bottom, that last line will change.
And it is the membership number, hesitancies, or is it the rolling 3-year average?
It's a rolling 3-year average, and now that is, essentially what got us on equalization aid is that third, fourth year, if you look at it, that was a little bit larger, it fell off. So now that we've seen those lower numbers, because our graduating classes that are going out are quite higher, what I would say, our pre-K classes coming in, now you're starting to see that larger drop in the lower average.
I think that we still feel that, what do they call it? On the bottom of the revenue report, that decline enrollment exemption
Yep.
thing.
Yeah.
It saves us a little bit.
One thing that we have in our favor too is that, we have the ability, we increased that, payment last year on that, we have the ability to essentially shut that off, right? So we've shut that off so that we can manage that mill rate a little bit better.
I don't have 4 years left on that, no?
29, 30 will be the last one, and it's a very small payment to 29, 30. It's about $130,000.
And let us all remember that, in the last 2 years, we've reduced 27 staff members and we made some other additional cuts. So that's why that 882 isn't $1.8 million. And people still have raises that work in this district, so we really try to do good work by the people that work here and the community and the taxpayers. And the kids, like for the kids.
Questions, comments, concerns, questions? Alright, seeing none, we'll move on to item 4, improving our instructional strategy supporting student learning. Item A is review the school district calendars for 25-26 and 26-27.
So these are the ones we actually looked at last committee as well. So the changes are listed there. Didn't know if you had any thoughts, questions, wonders, or we actually brought it to on action item.
I will say, I was leery of the drag over, for a better term, of the summer school days, going random days that week, but as someone who made a purpose to go out the days that last week before the 4th of July and see kids came to school, so I kind of like, okay, I feel better now, so I then have no further concerns.
Summer school, people are really pleased to have a second year be,
Yes.
kids to be on the district calendar now, so positive.
The 26-27 calendar is it's just beautiful, everything hit, I'm sure it was a lot, I know they're a lot of work, but it's just.
We did one, so that's good. If we can please one, that's good. It just is a complicated beast.
Yes, for sure. All right, no questions, comments, concerns on that one? Item B is review employee handbook for 25-26 dates.
Brought this forward last month for initial review, just, what we have added, I think it's a lot of just verbiage changes for 25-26. To just move this forward tonight so that we can get it in place before starting service.
And on the, when we talked last time, we talked a little bit about personal days, and after more discussion at the office, we took that part off. So it would still be $130 for a personal day payout for people who don't take action.
Any questions for me, anybody else?
How many people actually time sheet their time?
Well, that would be all hourly employees that we have, so
Between a 50 and 100 probably.
Alright.
Yeah, right, it depends on what day it is. It's December 24th.
Alright, item 5, aligning and developing our facilities to best meet educational safety and security goals. First reading of policies 1422, 1662, 2260, 2266, 3122, 3362, 4122, 4360, 5517, 5517, 101, 8510, 8500, 8531, 8550, and 8550.
We said we were only gonna do 10.
I
There's
know.
more than 10. So apologies for that, but between food service and these other policies, it's like, let's just do the work. Because we were doing the work. Important to say, right, that we work every day in this district to prevent any kind of harm, but sometimes things do happen, and having clear, consistent policies are essential. Right, so that's why we looked at all of them. Some of them, I hope you noticed, like when you looked at 1662, 3662, or 3362 and 4362, they're all the exact same policy because the way Neola has it set up is it's anti-harassment, support staff, professional staff, and administration. Correct. And the Neola policies were reviewed by legal and the administrative team, so it's not just a standard Neola policy. So when you look at the lined out versions, that's why some of them look different. An example, like if you just bring up the first one, the anti-bullying, like one of the major changes, it was a bullying policy as opposed to anti-bullying policy, right? So when you look at the line outs in that. And then there are pieces to simplify the process, so you don't describe, we've learned lots of things through this together, but you don't describe certain behaviors. This is a behavior, because if you don't have that behavior listed in your policy and it happens and you're calling it that, but it's not written in your policy, there's a problem with the continuity across. Student anti-harassment, so you can see like what we did for each one is defined pretty clearly there, so that you can see that. It's important to note that the, you can scroll down a little bit more, or no, keep scrolling, sorry. The, non-discrimination based on, sex and education program activities, that's the 2020 policy, because the 24 policy we never adopted. And you'll notice there aren't any red lines, because essentially legal rewrote it to make it so that it follows a pattern, and so that our compliance officers have absolute steps that they know how to take. So that is why, if you were looking for red lines on that one, why you might not have seen them. In the food service policies,
So as far as food service goes, this is, again, Neola pushes out what they believe, it's a cyclical, right? Like updates that need to be done because DPI does some updates. So you can see what the explanation for the wellness, free and reduced price, and then the vending machines. I would say free and reduced pricing is probably the one that we talk about the most. One of the big changes that we made with that, previous policy identified $25, thank you, $25 as the max for when it would be when there would be phone calls made, correct? And deemed negative if phone calls made. $25 is not a lot for a family of 5, but a little, obviously if you only have one child. So we've changed that language to say a week's worth of meals, because that's different for every family. What was your favorite policy? It's a tie.
So the red lines, the suggested things, is that stuff that our legal is putting in there, or that's what Neola's putting in there, or a combo of both, or?
if it's redlined out, it's coming out based on what legal has recommended.
But who's legal? Legal from Neola or legal from our? legal team?
Neola is the policy creator, legal is our legal team.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you need these two then, or is this just on an annual, or 10 years, like one of these is from 97, like past that? How do these come out?
And that's
Yeah.
why we're doing the 5-year review too, so they give an update 2 times a year of here's things that you should consider in your policies.
Sure.
And then it's up to you internally to determine when you're gonna see them. So if you don't ever have a rotation,
Sure.
you may never see a policy because it may never be
Like
active.
the financial one from last month, some of them went from 95 to 99
Yeah.
on the schools, and what I'm looking at is 97.
Yeah.
So it seems like there's no rhyme or reason, but there should be.
Well, and
Like
there-
it has, should be the pattern or
Right,
something.
in even some of the language, I don't know if you noticed, like some of the language when you read it, you're like, that's not even the way we would say that. That's because that was in 2016 how we said it. And so trying to take that out and say like, okay, we're not gonna put those words in, what is the right word? And so it's protected class based on state and federal guidelines. So then it's, you're covered as opposed to bringing policies back to change them or have words in there that don't make sense any longer. So there was a movement, like 15 years ago, that said put everything in your policy. And that movement is different now, so that's why there's guidelines, you know, behind policies as well.
Well, how much of this stuff is gonna change more because of the federal government's done? Like, there's not gonna be as much from there, I would assume, is what is happening now.
Right, so,
Like, it's
and
gonna
that's
be
why
more
it says,
state-run stuff than, and state-led than
Right.
federal-led.
and that's why it says federal and state in some of these policies with that intention to make sure that we're covered.
I also think Becky and Trish together have done a good job with Shannon as well, to making it a point to go through all of our policies, right? Like, that is a goal that you have, and I appreciate that. It also means there's a lot of work on the side, so I can recognize that as well.
And also, do want to pay attorneys to go through these policies, not really, but I've only taken one law class. So and fees matter, they matter to our community, they matter to us, it's really important to get these right. So even though we weren't off in a rotation, it was the right time to do it.
And logically, you can see how they all go together.
5. So it's long.
Are you saying 5 is better? Okay.
Yes,
good.
5 would be a
Okay.
nice number.
Well,
15 pages on 5.
Yes, well, one of them was 27 pages
Yeah.
long, sorry about that.
Questions on policies? Tristan, you're at the ball, front and back? Oh, great.
What was your favorite one? Vending machines as well?
Yeah,
Yes.
for sure, for sure.
Corey's favorite, always important.
So, is it on the wellness one that, do we have to put maybe a title of positions or something? And the only reason I asked that, so if you go to the wellness one, right there, it says, although we didn't check out, it's,
Yes.
yeah, it's supposed to be. Oversight on the first.
Anything else on this item? Otherwise, we'll adjourn for 20 minutes or less.